Hello and welcome to this month's episode of the BioWar Devblog. Today I'm going to be looking at the second of our protagonists, Henry Price, along with his friends. Before we get started today, I'd like to thank Captain Spades for their incredible artwork that is going to be displayed throughout this video. You can find them on Twitter at CaptainSpades_ if you are interested in seeing or commissioning more of their work. Now, Henry is the second protagonist of the series in two senses. Firstly, he was the second character to be added to the series after William, the aim being to provide both a ground and airborne perspective of the battlefields of BioWar. Where William was the experienced and level-headed commander, Henry was conceptualised as the nervous and inexperienced pilot. Though Henry hasn't changed in those regards, he has certainly grown as a character. Along with the wingmen, he is never seen without. Today we are going to be looking at all three of these characters: the charismatic and charming Arthur, the ruthless and unstoppable Lillian, and of course, Henry himself. Let's start the day off with a sample from one of Henry's chapters. Henry Price here, 1st Attack Squadron, 2nd Formation. The voices of the other pilots on the radio stopped almost immediately. Holy shit, I think that's just sorted who's taking command here, one of the voices said. I ignored the comment, instead asking for an update. Another voice interrupted, this time from the Able Love's long-range radios. We haven't got a name for it yet, but the Soviets tell us they've seen one before. Treat it as a weapon of mass destruction. One of these is what reportedly destroyed Warsaw. Kill it or distract it long enough for Able Love to gain altitude and bring the big guns. All aircraft involved in the current operation are on this frequency. Understood. Who's in charge? I asked, hoping that the comment of the previous wasn't the view of everyone there. Stephen Jessing's here, number 75 Squadron. Thank God you guys are here. We have no clue what's going on. We were just directed from a raid on Berlin, one bomber pilot responded. Another voice spoke up, an American this time. Hoping you'd have a plan. We were told to expect you, hotshots. It was as I'd feared. They'd been waiting for us to arrive and save the day. I considered my options. I had to think fast before the other squadrons began to realise I was running on luck alone. Any fighter squadrons flying jets, break formation and follow me at full speed. We need to start causing some damage as quickly as possible. Bombers and attack squadrons, fly as high as you can while still being able to see it. Spread out and try to hit that thing's top. The 1st Attack Squadron. With the arrival of bioweapons changing everything for the Allies, the RAF had to rethink and restructure in order to adapt to the new threats posed by these creatures. The answer was the creation of attack squadrons, multi-role dedicated squadrons that were trained to operate individually or in small groups once deployed to a battle space, with equal amounts of training in air-to-air and air-to-ground combat. Of course, these squadrons couldn't rely on the propeller-driven aircraft of their predecessors, especially as the bioweapons began to adapt and improve upon the lacking German jet aircraft available. With the Gloster Meteor already in service and having proven successful in a fighter role, it was decided that the Meteor would make the ideal platform for a multi-role aircraft. A lot of planning and flight tests by a certain individual, the Meteor Reaper 2 was ready for service with the new attack squadrons. Henry Price had a privileged childhood. His father, having served in the Royal Flying Corps during World War I, had since gained favour within the Air Force, becoming a prominent figure in the higher echelons of fighter command. Henry is shy and often lacks the confidence to believe in his own abilities. Having spent a lot of his childhood learning to fly and maintain his father's biplanes, he became a prime candidate for conscription into a fighter squadron. Thanks to the influence of both his father and one other individual with a lot of influence, Henry was assigned to the RAF's 1st Attack Squadron during their first intake of trainees. Lillian Lecraft. Born in a similar situation to Henry, Lillian was constantly scolded for her hands-on and boisterous behaviour. As one of the few remaining families in Britain to arrange marriages purely based on business interests, the Lecraft family found Lillian to be a spanner in the works of their plans, as she continually refused the advances of, or simply dismissed every suitor that was put in front of her. By 1946, when conscription of women began in the UK, Lillian was first in line to sign up for the RAF, quickly gaining a place in the newly formed 1st Attack Squadron. Pleased to be rid of their troublesome daughter, the Lecraft family ensured she got whatever she asked for in order to keep her away from the family house and business, something that Lillian herself was unbothered by. Lillian's goals thus became twofold: find a suitably submissive husband and survive the war. Though I personally cannot confirm anything yet, there are rumours that she had some sway in Henry's assignment to the squadron. Arthur Bruce. Nicknamed the Cannon Slinger of Australia, Arthur Bruce was born and raised in Australia, joining the RAAF as soon as he could. Seeking adventures and to conquer both the skies and the hearts of anyone who caught his eye in the meantime. As the war in the Pacific raged on, however, Arthur's reserve squadron of boomerangs saw little action, giving Arthur the perfect excuse to move to the UK and begin his crusade anew. Though at least half noble in his goals, the Bruce family disowned Arthur when he began the voyage, leaving him in a state of confusion by the time he reached Britain. Having been a test pilot for the RAF for a year, Arthur was finally transferred to the 1st Attack Squadron during their training, in the hopes his experience would help his new wingmen. Now, as I have done with William, it's now time for the inspirations for these 3 daring pilots. To begin with, the thought of even having a pilot perspective came around thanks to the amazing work of Jose Pavley on the Project Wingman soundtrack, which you can find here. It was this soundtrack that, along with Project Wingman itself, inspired me to add the perspectives of the pilots to the series. Henry himself came from a few different sources. Firstly, I wanted him to have a different experience to the others, being something more than a generic tough guy soldier. Arthur and Lillian's creation are, for the most part, related quite closely. As the wingmen to Henry, for one of them in more ways than one, Arthur and Lillian needed their own distinct personalities while not completely dominating Henry's narrative. For this reason, both of these characters grew into complete and self-sufficient characters, supporting Henry and acting as part comic relief, while also acting as amplifiers for Henry's struggles throughout the story. Both of these characters came about, again, thanks to inspiration from Project Wingman. For those who have experienced this game, it shouldn't take long to guess who inspired Lillian's personality. As for Arthur, inspiration was taken from a few sources, including the YouTuber Rimmy Down Under, Solo Wing Pixie from Ace Combat Zero, and in later stages of his development, a couple of other sources, but that would reveal a little too much. And that is all for the pilots today, though I can assure you that more will be on the way regarding these soon enough. For now, though, it's time to move on to the Q&A. So, the first 3 questions come from the YouTube comments section, so I shall do these in the order they appear. Do you have a particularly favourite band whose music completely encompasses the essence of BioWar? To a degree, I do, yes. I would probably say the soundtrack to the Call of Duty Zombies games would be the particular set of tracks I listen to the most, and that I most associate with the series as well. Looks like the characters were inspired by video game soundtracks. Did the music also have an influence on how the book was written, how the action plays out, etc.? It most certainly did. Some entire segments of the story changed when I discovered a new piece of music, and I would say that the music I listened to and the action within the books is so closely linked that they should be considered almost part of the same package. What would you say is your favourite song that inspired BioWar? Is it one listed here, or is it one you didn't have time to include? That is a very difficult question to answer, partially because there were so many good songs that went into the writing of this book. If I was forced to pick one, however, it would probably be The Gift from Call of Duty Zombies, a track that featured in the last video. And that brings us to the end of our Q&A for this month. As always, please leave a comment with your questions and I'll get around to all of them eventually. At the moment, I'm able to answer all of the following questions every month, so ask whilst you can get replies quickly. Conclusion. At the moment, there isn't much in the way of news besides the usual. The books are still being written and editing is still happening. So, for the time being, there won't be an updates section to these videos until there's something new to share. For now, though, thank you very much for watching, and I will return to spread more joy next month.